Good evening. My name is Jim Reeder of Reeder's Hardwood Supply. I started in the industry in August 14th, 1990 at a company called Downs and Reeder in Stoke. Some of you may know that company, have seen me there over the years. When we started, we had 5 employees, and when we sold in 2017, we had 72 employees from 4 locations across the East Coast. We sold people back then from yourselves all the way to names that you'd know, like Potlatch, Weyerhaeuser, Gibson Guitar, Nashville. They were all our customers. In general, I've done just about everything from cruising timber with Cotton Hanlon out in Elmira, New York, to visiting shops, big woodworking shops like Herrick and White here in Rhode Island, and everywhere in between. I've traveled to South America, to the rainforest 3 times, and seen timber there cut down. You know, when you cut a big tree down from this gentleman to me, and it hits the ground and you bounce off the ground, that was a big tree. And that tree that I saw them cut down took 45 minutes to cut the tree down. They just had to cut all the buttresses off and then go around and then fell the tree. And that tree was 300 feet tall. It was a Kumaru tree. And that was in Puerto Maldonado, Peru. So I might just ask if there's any questions, because I didn't bring anything with me except some swag on the table. You all can help yourself to it. Most of my knowledge is kept in here. So I've had 34 years of experience doing this. Any questions you have about anything from red oak, white oak, cherry, maple, any species, I could probably answer it. I was asked to talk about rift and quartered white oak and how it's manufactured. Basically, if you're going to quarter a tree, it's got to be a big one, because if it's a little tree, maybe yay big, and you cut it and then you quarter it, you're going to get lumber that's 4 or 5 inches wide at best, and that's on the quarter sawn part. So what I'll do is I'll draw a little drawing here and then give you an idea. Big drawing, actually. So here's a tree. Pardon my circle, it's pretty bad. When this tree goes in, they're going to debark it. And then they'll do a couple of cuts on it. And that'll be your flat sawn material. They might take a section off here, get rid of that slab, take another section here. That'll be flat sawn lumber or plain sawn. They'll turn the log, and then they'll go right down the middle, just like this, right across. So you have a top section and the bottom section. Those will flip around and go off to what's called a resaw. And they're just going to start cutting from the edge like this, making little slices. And as they make slices, your growth rings. I'm using big growth ring straight, so you can see. Like that. When you're over here on this side, this is your rift lumber, because the saw marks are going to be hitting the growth rings at a 45-degree angle. So you're not going to get any flecking from the rays that go through the tree. Your quarter saw material comes from basically this section of the tree right in here, where it's almost going at a 90-degree angle, and your perfect boards are right in here, where you get 90 degrees, and then you get that awesome flecking that goes by. They'll be from this section of the tree. So your quarter sawn lumber, when it's quartered and rift, is always wider than the rift, because the rift comes from this side over here. Well, that's basically
so in the highly figured woods, is it typical? The quilted woods, are they quarter sawn or is that rift sawn?
Well, a quilt is a different pattern.
Okay.
Quilting will be found in almost anything. I've seen it in hard maple, soft maple, cherry, and a few others, especially big leaf maple from the Pacific Northwest. That's where you see your best quilt. It's where the grain is almost boiling.
So is that flat sawn?
That has nothing to do with how it's cut. That's how the tree grows.
But when the board is cut for that to be visible.
They will plane saw that. So they will,
Plain saw.
yeah, that'll come off this side right here. That'll be your best figure with
Okay,
the quilted. Same thing with a curly maple or a bird's eye. That'll be the same way. If you quarter saw, you're really not going to see it as well as you will if it's plain saw.
A little bit and just explain he already has the ask that what is the way,
Plain sawn versus rift sawn, quarter sawn?
yes,
Okay, there's three ways to do it. Your plain sawn, you're gonna take this log and you're gonna cut off the edges. You're gonna rotate the log around. The saw is gonna cut a few more passes. Continue rotating the log around until you have a big box. So looking at this tree here, if your head rig is here and you have your big giant bandsaw right here and you're cutting, you're gonna cut off this section right here and that goes away. The next pass will go through and we'll take another pass off. That goes away right there. So you have, there's your cut. You're gonna flip the log around, put this on the bottom down here, so it sits nice and flat. And then you're gonna start cutting again off the edge. And you're gonna go in a little bit and then you're gonna stop. You're gonna rotate again and start cutting it again. When this gets to be a box, something like that, most sawmills will take that, which is called a cant. They'll take this and roll it off into what's called a resaw. There'll be a guy on the resaw, he'll sit there and his responsibility is to look at the log. Do I have a nice clean open face? No, he'll flip it, look for that open face, and then he'll cut something off that edge. And it'll go around a merry-go-round and it'll come back to him. There might be 16 or 18 of those on a merry-go-round that one guy is cutting. When he does that, that'll be that. And the head rig guy, he starts on his next log and keeps going. All he does is square up the log and fire it off to this guy doing that. And most sawmills will have two of those guys on two different merry-go-rounds cutting those boards. And they can be cutting 4/4 and 8/4 at the same time. Usually it's two different thicknesses, depending on the size of the cant they get and what they have. That's why sometimes you'll see 6/4 can be very narrow because it's usually the first cut and they're cutting 12 or 16/4 against it. So you want to get into the heart of the log as fast as you can to get that real meat. So they're going to cut a 6/4 piece here and it's usually going to be narrow. That's why when I shop the lumber, I try to find people that make good lumber of whatever thickness I'm buying and try to buy the best. Yes, sir.
What, in your opinion, produces the better pot? Dance style sawmill.
Your saw curve is going to be better with a band mill over a circle. However, circle mills have their purpose. If I had a sawmill, my head rig would be a circle. A double cut circle. Clean up with the band because the band makes a nicer finish on it. It's easier to plane from that. You have a question?
Yeah, like if you're going to these.
Yes, sir.
These guys go. Typically. How long?
They will mostly deal with logs anywhere from 8 feet to 16-foot long. And usually they're 6 inches over length when they come into the sawmill. So that way they can trim it and whatnot. They'll have a double end trim system as that goes through the grading chain. And most lumber is between, well, let me rephrase that. Most domestic hardwood is usually 1.5 inches or 2 inches over length in the rough form. If it's S4S, it's probably going to be cut almost on the money because it's cleaned up at that point.
do you put those shorts on sale?
Yeah, the 4 to 6 foot material.
Is that junk?
No, that's not, depending on the species, those could be the first cuts, or they could be something from the center of the tree where they'll look at it and say, I have a 16-foot board, I get a clear section, I can trim that, that goes over here and I can get more money for it. And this is a too common piece that goes over there. Otherwise, the whole board is too common. So depending on where it comes from in the tree, that's what that is. A lot of it is the starter cut when they go in. If you get a tree that's got a you'll see crooked lumber. They call it I think it's a dog leg, I believe. So you'll have a log like this. When it goes into the mill, they'll cut right here. And then they'll start working their way in. So you get those little pieces or this edge here. Those will become your shorts. And then a lot of those shorts develop because some of the big furniture plants like Marilat and Mills Pride, those guys, their lines aren't made to handle lumber 6 foot and shorter. So they just fall through. So they have everything 7 foot longer when that comes in. So they get that's their tooling of the way they work there.
Exactly.
Okay, a board foot of lumber is a cubic form of measurement. So 144 cubic inches equals a board foot. Layman's terms, if you have a piece of lumber that's 12 inches wide, 12 inches long, and 1 inch thick, rough measure, that's a board foot. If it's surfaced to 3/4, it's still a board foot because it's based on the rough measure. If it's 5/4, that same square foot would be 1 1/4 board feet. Because you take your square footage, your 12 by 12, and multiply it by 1.25, and that equals 1.25 board feet.
And how,
Yes.
when I was first buying lumber.
Mhm.
Stepped into this house, I was under the naivety that if I bought, say, 6 board feet of lumber that was 3/4 inch thick.
Mhm.
And I was under the impression that would be half the price of what 6 foot like or that is twice. But I quickly found out twice costs more for it than the thin.
Correct.
To myself,
Correct. So that would be the difference. Well, okay, so you have 4/4 lumber, which is 1 inch thick in the rough. And then you have, we'll double it, we'll call it 8/4, which is 2 inches in the rough. Those come from 2 different logs most of the time. Your thicker lumber comes from a bigger piece of log. So to get nice 8/4, 10/4, 12/4, you need a big log. Something like if I took this table and flipped it on its side, that's where you're going to get your 8/4 lumber from. A little tiny log like this, you're going to get 4/4 out of it only at best. And then you're going to get what's left in the middle, which is called a cant. That's what the pallet manufacturers use. Because no one wants to, you don't want to make a piece of furniture out of a boxed heart because that board's just going to go crazy on you. Generally, we'll go to a pallet manufacturer, a flooring manufacturer, where they'll cut pieces around that and get rid of the pith. Because if you use lumber with pith in the middle of it, it's not going to stay stable. It's going to have a lot of tension. No, it's not always here. It could be over here if the tree was on a hill or something and there's more weight on the side.
So are you saying that the very center core of the tree is not necessarily stable?
That is correct. That pith, that's the original stem that the tree was growing up. And that just turns into a spongy mess after a while. Yeah, they'll cut it at like 2 and, I want to say 2 and, trying to think. It's not 2 and 1/8, it's just a little bit more than that, probably like 2 5/16 or something like that. Because it shrinks. All lumber shrinks approximately 8% when dry, green to dry. And each species is different. Hard maple is the worst at like 8 1/4%. And I believe it's red oak might be at 6%. I haven't looked at the chart in 20 years. So. And you had a question?
It's really interesting, but you also said, it sounds like you don't make furniture and you don't have some Stay, you, is that true? Stay in the zone, and if so, why?
Why do I stay in the zone?
Yeah, the zone
Uh,
of. carrying stock.
Because you could say I'm lumber autistic. I really like what I do, and I don't believe if I jumped in the realm of starting building furniture and doing that at what I'm doing, that's competing with what you guys do and my customers do. So I like to stay,
You're a large broker, that could be. You're bringing in the lumber. By,
I'm bringing in kiln dried lumber from sawmills that I've known for 30 some odd years that do the best of what they do. And each sawmill has a particular species or thickness that they do better than others. So I try to bring in the best I can from each person or each sawmill that I deal with. And when that comes in, that'll go in the bin. You come in, select out what you want right out of the bin. It's just like going to Walmart or Stop and Shop and you're gonna pick grapes or tomatoes or something like that. You want to pick the ones you want. Because,
another back to your.
well, if you go on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see photos. I don't do turning blanks, but if you wanted to buy bull stock, like a piece of 12-quarter cherry that you only need 3 feet long, as long as I'm left with an 8-footer, yeah, we can cut off a piece. That's not a problem.
So my son-in-law bought a great pile of air dried ash from the sawmill up in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
We tried to take it somewhere and build it. Is that because of the emerald ash problem, or do you think there's something else?
No, a lot of places, if it's air dried or green, they don't want to dry it because that stuff will stick to the inside of your dust collector. And that'll create a bigger problem going down the line. Not to mention me now, it's not a big deal because mine goes to Concentra across the street from me. They use it to mix with all their stuff and send it to the burn plant. But when I had Downs and Reader, we sold all our residual waste. Everything went to New England Wood Pellet, Jaffrey, New Hampshire. So when that happened, everything had to be kiln dried waste. If I took that air dried stuff in and they tested it and it came up, I would owe them money for the trail load of junk because they couldn't do anything with it. They can't turn it into wood pellets. And we would, in the Downs days, one second, you're next. In the Downs days, we did 2 trailers a week of residual sawdust and grindings.
How do you buy your whole length of it?
I buy a kiln dried. You'll see photos on my Instagram page of stuff when it comes in. I could have 13 different items and thicknesses on a trailer.
The reason I asked is I noticed. Michigan, other states. The trend is not to ship more bottling, ship 100. What they do is but usually 6 wide, and they're getting more.
That lumber there is for 2 things. When it's 8'6", that's gonna go to a peeler plant. And it's gonna be turned into plywood. The other one that could go to would be a tie plant where they make railroad ties. That would be either 7 foot or 9 foot long, depending if it's a regular tie or a switch tie. That's actually big business. You can do that, but it's for what I do, that all 8-footers wouldn't work for me. I gotta have a mix because I have guys making kitchens and they need some length, or it could be anything really.
So the Mexican size,
I have 64 species from all around the world.
so it's all about.
Teak is a banned trade item. The teak is no more. The real stuff, the Tectonus grandis from Burma is no more. It's considered blood teak over the past 5 years. Think of that as blood diamonds. It's the same thing. The coup that took over Burma, our government doesn't play well with them at all for obvious reasons. What they're doing is they're taking their young people at gunpoint and having them go out in the forest and cut the trees. And then they're turning around and they're selling it to wherever they can get money for it to fund their new regime. And I was reading up on that. I believe it's World Wildlife Fund or one of those. You might be able to find it on the internet, that there's at their current rate of deforestation, there's only 5 years left of that real teak. You have plantation teak, which is grown in Africa and South America, but it's just not the same thing. It doesn't have the silica in there. It's the same properties, but the silica is what gives it that 50 years outside. But what's left in the United States is what is here. There is no. You're talking African or South American?
Well, South America.
Okay, so the genuine. Oh, the genuine stuff, you can't beat it. That's like the best
Yeah.
working wood in the world right there. So that would be Stratina macrophylla, that grows anywhere from southern Mexico all the way down through Brazil and northern Chile. That we used to bring in a fair amount from, I grabbed my bottle of water for a second. We used to bring in a fair amount from Peru, which was excellent material back in the day. A lot of it now is coming out of Central America and it's second growth material. And it's a little bit that pinky yellow color. The stuff I have is old Brazilian stock that a buddy of mine that I've known for years, he still has some rat hole in his facility he sells me. So yeah, the African mahogany, the best comes out of Ghana, because they have the proper equipment where they can turn the log like we do here in the United States to get nice plain sawn material. But you'll get material out of other areas like the Congo, the Ivory Coast. They grab it and they just cut it. So you'll get 40–50% ribbon stripe in it. It's still good material, but it's not that real Ghana stuff.
40 or 50% what?
40 or 50% ribbon stripe. Because when they cut the log, they don't have the mechanized ability to be able to take this log and turn it on the bandsaw.
Okay.
So they'll cut it in half and then worm the thing over and then start cutting it on the carriage. So when they cut it, you're going to get some plain sawn over here, but when you get in here, you get all that ribbon stripe. And the African that's in here, and then you get the plain sawn over here. Depending on what it is, yes and no. If you have sapele, it's extremely stable. Where if you have flat sawn sapele, I don't even stock it because it won't stay. It's beautiful lumber when it's milled. It's some of the best looking stuff that I've ever seen. But you could mill a board that's this wide and 10 feet long and put it down on the bench and come back an hour later and it's because it's got the tension in it. But ribbon stripe won't go on it. Ribbon stripe in African mahogany has tension in it. And it's got the reverse grain going, and it's not necessarily the world's stablest lumber. But you have flat sawn African, that's stable. Each species is very different in how it's handled. There's a question over here.
Is what you sell S4S, S3S?
I do rough, dress two sides, rip one edge, and S4S. And that's not in every species. A lot of them, if they're hard to come by, like quarter sawn white oak, I might only have it.
Just rough.
I do 4 through 16 quarter. And everything in between. Yes, sir.
American chestnut.
Yes.
That's been recycled from old farms.
Correct.
Is there any other
Recycled woods, I do the reclaimed American chestnut. I have 4 quarter and 8 quarter. I wish I could have seen it when it was new, because that was over 50% of the forest back in the day. And it's all died out. There is still American chestnut in the forest today, but when it gets to be about 12 feet tall, it dies back. And the root system is the same root system that's been there since 1900. And it's still trying to grow. And there is Rumor has it on the Cape, there is an American chestnut tree way, way out beyond Orleans. It still hasn't been touched. And in the past 5 or 6 years, there was actually a grove about 25 or 30 acres. I believe it was out in Wisconsin that they were studying because they were American chestnuts. They were all timber sized, big things, 2-3 feet in diameter. And some knucklehead went out there and wore the same shoes they wore somewhere else, and the whole thing died. So they cut all the trees down. But you can actually look up the article. It's in National Hardwood magazine. And you can see where they took the stuff to the sawmill and they cut it. It's all that brilliant yellow ash-like grain. It's beautiful lumber. It's kind of a shame.
But no other ones.
Yeah, you can do, you'll see reclaimed red oak, reclaimed pine, reclaimed would be eastern white pine, reclaimed hemlock. Hemlock mostly is those mushroom boards, if you've ever heard of them. That's fantastic stuff if you ever can get a hold of it. There's good mushroom boards. Yeah, like mushrooms. They grow mushrooms in it out in eastern New York. And when the boards are spent, they take them out, kiln dry them, and then they're mushroom boards because they got all that funky spalted grain and stuff. And they're really cool looking. I'll get them if I can find them really nice stuff because it's cool stuff. You know, it's kind of a wiki. So.
River by river reclaimed.
River reclaimed? No, I haven't. Not in my current capacity, but it's my other company. I did river or sinker cypress. We had a big job with that down in one of the islands at the east end of Long Island. They replanted the whole side of the house with all water sun. But it's crazy stuff to dry. Pecky cypress, I don't stock it, but I can get it. Trying to think, is it more expensive than that? I have to look at the price book. But walnut has worldwide demand, and there's a finite resource for it. So it's back in the day, if you go in the late 90s, right around 99, 2001, somewhere, Brazil banned the export of genuine mahogany. And that was really the death of genuine mahogany at that point. That's when a lot of people started switching to African or Sapele or, oh geez, how many more of them are there? There's like 7 different exterior red species. And each one had a little niche of where they went to. I'm drawing blanks on a lot of them, but one of them I stock is Red Grandis. That's plantation grown in South America. That's one. So I think of the other ones. So it's Tiama. That was another one that could sometimes be mixed in African mahogany. Most people can't tell the difference, but I can. It acts the same. It has the same kind of density, but it's just a little bit different when you look at the lumber. It's a little more fuzzy.
Why? Look, you go up first than expected, boy, you pay up like.
I used to.
You think that's worse for it than you get.
No, everything I buy is on NHLA terms of sale or sales code. That's National Hardwood Lumber Association sales code. So it's got to be inspected after drying, et cetera, that kind of thing. And usually if I have a problem, it's just a phone call and it can just go away at that point. But I have dealt with my unscrupulous people in the past. National Hardwood Lumber Association. They're based out of Memphis, Tennessee. Mhm.
They would sell or PVC,
Me personally, I would go with a PVC all day long. I live on Cape Cod and I've gone through the whole finger joint pine nonsense. I would not buy that stuff at all unless it's interior trim. Because if you're gonna put that on the outside of the house, invariably, you're gonna get that one piece that's like 13 feet in the air, about 6 feet long. That's gonna rot, everything else is fine. Yeah, no, I wouldn't use that stuff. It has its purpose, but not there. If you were gonna come into my place and you're gonna ask, what can I use? And money was no object, I would say Western red cedar, clear vertical grain all day long. But that is the Cadillac of all the stuff. If you wanted to use something that was gonna last reasonably 10 to 15 years with painting on all 6 sides and then applying it on the side of the house, I would say the red Grandis would be the way to go. It's a little bit porous, it'll take the paint. I'm sorry? Maple's not an exterior wood, it's moderately durable at best outside.
Starts to rot.
It will rot. Yeah, you'll get 5 or 7 years out of it at best. Marante, that's exterior. Typically that's used for dark red. Marante is typically used for decking. You generally don't see it in board form where you can actually use it for trim. Very rarely is it like that. If it is, it's going to be the red Bilal, which is real dense. But I would use it on something else other than trim. That would be me though.
So I see places where static.
Mhm.
And you don't.
The only place I do is that special corner where all the cool stuff is.
Yeah.
As we're going through, if we find something that's really neat, like cherry, that is like super figured, we'll take it out, we'll stand it up in the corner. We'll do that. Generally, I don't like to stand lumber up like that because it doesn't stay flat. Over time, it will tend to bend.
So it's best in our job.
If you can lay it flat, lay it flat. That's the best way to store it. You can if you choose to, but you don't need to. Kiln dried lumber is very forgiving. So if you went to the store, any store, and you bought kiln dried lumber that was in the rough and it was starting to sprinkle outside and you weren't that far away from the house, don't worry about it. Just take it out, sticker it, put it in the garage, it'll be fine. Because the core of the material is dry. It'll be fine. And when you run it through the planer, all that dampness is going away anyway. It's not a big deal. However, if you have a basement shop, which I'm assuming most of you do, or a garage that's got a cement floor, never put the lumber on the floor because it will wick the moisture right up. And then you're going to get a board that's like a lottery ticket. The side on the floor is going to be this, and the rest of it's going to go like that. The upper side is going to concave. The dry side is going to concave, the other side is going to convex.
Can you reverse that?
Yes, you can. You flip the board over. No, it's seriously, it'll re-dry. I do that with plywood. You get this time of year and in the winter, you'll get the dry side of the plywood, you flip it, and a day later it's flat again. Because it just rebalances the cell. In my capacity now, I would say walnut, sapele, and white oak in general. Between those 3, and of the white oak, it would be quarter sawn of the 3, quarter rift and flat.
What is it? Is it CD?
Sapele, Sapele, and it's pronounced sapele. It's got the French E on the end with a little doodad over the top.
So get back to outdoor.
Yes,
Said PVC.
that's what I'm putting on my house.
So how does that cost wise?
It's extremely expensive compared to the other stuff, but it's got a 50-year lifespan. I don't have to replace it. So I'm doing it all now. I do not intend on replacing that, when I have grandkids.
Where are you on the case?
I live in Bourne. I'm sorry?
So.
Oh, you're talking about like yellow wood or something like that? That's usually copper arsenic or. Um. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with that stuff,
It'll outlive you.
but it's. I've had stuff where I had pressure treated stuff and put posts in the ground and the whole center of the post is all rotted out with termites because they can get in through the bottom. They'll find a way. Because it's just pressure treated, it doesn't go all the way to the core.
See, oh, follow. Now, saying that. Earlier, later, these aren't exactly as straight as they were in the meeting. Physically made. Like concrete.
That typically is done.
That affect the quality.
No, what that's doing is that's putting pressure on the wood. And that's done in a commercial environment. When I had my other company, we used to dry 500,000 feet of lumber a month. But not as us, we used a contract kiln. And when that stuff went in the kiln, yes, they would put on the very top to weight the lumber down so it didn't go all wonky and crazy. They would weight it down with concrete slabs.
That really makes a difference. I just struggle.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And the key is getting into kiln drying. Avoid a solar kiln that does not get hot enough to kill the bugs. It's got to get over 160 degrees, 180 degrees to kill the little bug larva that's in there. I will not buy lumber that isn't dried in a professional kiln. Just for that reason. Now substituting it for what? Spanish cedar is excellent wood to work with. Its workability is equal to South American, in my opinion, just from cutting it and planing it and stuff. However, with Spanish cedar, it's prone to bleeding at any given time for any particular reason. It's really, really a weird species that way. And there's nothing you can do to prevent that. There's no, like with Eastern white pine, setting the pitch at 180 degrees. You can't do that. It will just all of a sudden like that and bleed. It's an excellent outdoor species. A lot of guys make doors and windows, exterior, all over Boston, Cambridge, Natick, everywhere. Yes. Yeah, as long as there's no sapwood in it. The sapwood is not durable at all, but the heartwood is durable. And side note with white oak versus red oak's little pores, if you do a cut and you look at the end grain, you'll see the pores are hollow when you look in there. Those capillaries carry the food for the tree up to the crown. And they're not segmented like you would find in a white oak tree. So white oak, each one has a little segment in it. It's basically a stop. So when it goes up, it stops, goes up, it stops. It's like a brake. That's why you have a white oak barrel or white oak used in shipbuilding, because if you use red oak, it's just going to leak all over the place. It's there, but you don't see the rays in quarter-sawn red oak that you would in a white oak. They're so much more pronounced in white oak than they are in red oak.
Where's black?
I'm sorry, black. Oh, black limba. Black limba is from West Africa. And that's from a region of West Africa that was harvested for African mahogany 200 years ago. And when they harvested it, they never did anything. They kind of just walked away, and the black limba trees all grew up behind it and replaced the other trees that were there. The wonderful species. If you're making guitars, it's probably one of the best. It's the coolest looking. Apatong is I believe it's a CITES 1, so it's extremely difficult to get. That's out of Southeast Asia. It's typically used for truck bodies and
Right.
stuff because it's real dense.
It's like an upgrade charge by trailer.
Exactly.
Those are better than people.
No, absolutely. It's got a density, it's got a lot of reverse grain and stuff in it, so I can really take a beat. But primarily it was used for marine construction, like docks and stuff and pilings and stuff like that, as well as trailer bodies for trucks. Question over here? No?
What about humidity? You have to worry about humidity.
Um, in my store,
Yeah.
or not necessarily, because whatever the humidity is outside, it is inside. However, when it gets to be winter time, my store is kept at 50 degrees. Your shops might be at a higher temperature than that. So if you got to a situation, which we probably will in January or February, where it's 5, 10, 12 degrees outside, and you have the heat working inside, if you have a fan like this and you have dry heat versus forced hot water, that's going to super dry the air. So for example, if you had a piece of thick lumber, 12, 16 quarter, and you put a fresh cut on that, and you turned everything off, you just listen, you will actually hear it dry. It'll crack. So it's crazy as it sounds, but when it's that cold outside and it's heated inside, you've created a super dry atmosphere where it's somewhere around 5 or 10% humidity inside the house, and it's going to wick water from anywhere. That's why it's like if you're sitting there and you're talking, you're going to need water after water. Your plants dry out faster, everything dries out faster. The condensation goes on the windows because it's being whipped away and going away, and it's going to pull all that water right out of that lumber. You're going to create a super dry thing with your lumber. So that would be one thing to watch for. One way to get around that is you're going to cut one of those pieces. You can get something that's called blank. It's it'll come to me in a minute. We'll move on, but I'll come back to it. It's I want to say it's like it's not Armor Tech, it's something else. It's anchor steel. Yes, that's a it's derived from petroleum, but it's water based, and you paint it on the end of that so you can still use the lumber. You just saw a little piece of it and then you go do your project. But if you cut that, put that on there, it'll keep it from checking. Ipe is a species out of South America. Correct. It's extremely dense. It's the Cadillac of exterior decking. That species there, it's one of the few that you could actually cut a piece off and throw it in a swimming pool and have the kids die for it. It's about 1.02 on the scale of weight. Yes, it doesn't splinter very well. It's extremely hard to cut. If you're not gonna nail through it unless you have a ram set. Yeah, and it's extremely expensive too.
It's Sequoia or is that available in any size?
The only way it's available now is the second cut or third cut. And that's generally going to be construction hard redwood, where you're going to get a lot of knots in it. You might get an occasional little bit of sapwood on a corner or something. And the growth rings are not tight like they used to be. They're very, very wide growth rings. You might, if you had a 2x4, you might have 5 or 7 years across the whole thing. The only way you're going to get the real old growth stuff is if the tree actually falls by natural causes and they have a permit to cut it. Otherwise, it just sits there and all the bugs just do what they're going to do. But yeah, that all stopped in the Clinton administration because of the spotted owl. They stopped all that. I mean, you can say what you want about, oh, gee, spotted owl, all that nonsense and stuff, but at least they stopped, and there are some of them there for people to look at for generations to come. They're not gone. Old growth cypress is still around. It is still there because cypress is a fast and slow growing species at the same time. So you can have old growth cypress only because the stand is, there's a lot of trees in the stand and it will grow very slow. So you can still get that.
Do you deal with any torrefied?
I do not. I do not. It's that's one of the things that, yes, it changes the sugars in the wood into something that it bakes them out. So that way there's nothing for the mildew or the bugs to go after. It's great outside, but you know, if you think of having a little fire outside, and you pull something out, you go like this, you shake it all off and everything, and it's done. And then you go try to relight that the next day, it's gonna light very quickly. I would not use that stuff. That's just me. That's for that reason. I do not. Bamboo is a grass and there's usually more glue in it than bamboo in the long run, and it's extremely expensive. Any other crazy questions you want from?
So I gather you will special orders some exotics.
Depending on what it is, and if I can get it, yes.
So if I want some Cadillac,
That one I would have to find. That's a, if I'm thinking right, that is a East Mexico species.
yeah,
I've seen it before. It's kind of cool. I just have to find a viable resource where it would be decent. I try not to bring in stuff that's kind of, yeah, I'd rather bring in stuff that's cool.
yellow,
I have yellow hearts.
which for some reason has gotten really hard to find. You have.
I have them. The yellow heart I have has little pink streaks going through it every now and then, which is actually pretty cool. Canary wood is fantastic when it's melted. That's crazy stuff. But it's not yellow. I always thought it was yellow until we got it. I thought the flower is yellow. That's what I was. Sure.
So first of all, do you carry?
I have eastern white pine and southern yellow.
So. I thought you were supposed to turn it to spruce. It's really good for a lot.
It depends on what kind of spruce you're looking at. I have, it would be Sitka spruce from Alaska. And that's mass inspired grain, so it's all that tight vertical grain.
But snapping.
Okay, you mean like the spruce that's like grows around here in New England where they're gonna spruce pine for 2x4s and stuff like that. Everything has purpose. So if you have that and it was dried properly, yes, you could use it for certain things.
All right, so the- Southern yellow. It's nothing. In general.
Southern yellow pine is mostly put into your pressure treated material. However, if you get grade material, like C and better, which is clear, I stock it in 1x, 5/4 by, and 8/4. And that would be kiln dried, and all you do is plane it down and build what you want out of it.
Generally.
They're not gonna have it in the raw form. They will have it in pressure treated, but it's generally not untreated raw.
Just, I thought. And I've been to your place a few times. It's great. And I've kind of been seeing the phrases after I did that for 2 or 3 customers. You might want to share my shop, my personal shop, I basically have everything I need to know. But many times we chose that you guys do the job. They want to share history. A lot of people don't have. They don't have that. ability. I thought maybe, hopefully after this, we can see all. What they can do is they purchase something on you, and then say, okay, you know, like the project.
Okay, I can do that. I wasn't gonna do it, but because it was all about the questions and spreading knowledge and stuff, but, let's start off with, we offer 64 species, and thicknesses of 4/4 through 16/4. In self-serve bins, there's 288 bins of stuff you can select from. And you could pick your own boards out. I don't need to pick them for you. You can, put them on a cart, and then we'll play lumber quiz at the end with what everything is, which is my favorite part. He was referring to millwork. On site, we have a 24-inch double-sided planer. Planes top and bottom, both sides, is helical head. I have a straight line rip saw with a laser guide that will rip lumber up to 4 inches thick. We also have a wide belt sander that will sand. You bring a top into me and you want it sanded, we can go up to 43 inches wide. And we start at 40 grit, go to 120. Sanding starts at $125. And it is for each that's for the first hour, and for each 15 minutes after that is $40. Sorry?
Well worth it.
Yeah. Unless it's a 16-foot counter, 2.5 inches thick. Another guy trying to wrestle that thing through. That's where the 40 grit came from. I just want to do it as fast as I can.
I know my shop. Well, my shop's pretty good size, but it's to handle full length boards. It takes a lot. So, and at the cost. Well, plus there's equipment much better.
Well, it's cool stuff.
Yeah.
But the big thing is the gentleman that does the millwork for me, I can do it, but he does a much better job. He has more experience at it than I do. He was a customer of mine, buying from Downton Reader from 1990 up until we sold. His name is Dan. He used to have DWT Woodworking at Braintree. So when I told him, he was one of the first few people I told I was going to open up a new place when I worked for that other company that bought us out. He said, well, he's like, I'm going to shut down my shop and I want to come work for you. He's working for me now, but when you come in, or if you choose to, and you have woodworking questions, he is definitely a well worth talking to, because he has insight. He can show you different boards and stuff. And when he mills it, he really takes the time to do it right. He has some of his equipment from his shop in there. He's got an 8-inch joiner that you'll hear him run the stuff across every now and then. I'm not a fan of joiners. I think they're dangerous, but the planer I have actually joints the board as it goes through. The bottom head hits 18 inches before the top head does. So it self joints as it goes through. And one more.
I'm gonna jump in here just to say maybe one or two more, but I think you overheard him say he lives on Cape Cod. It's a bit of a drive. It's 9 o'clock already. But 2 more questions.
I actually thank you, but my bus shows up when they don't wait.
So anyway, maybe 2 more questions.
That's fine. I'll field them all day long. That's why.
Oh, you're too nice.
Doing
You're
this
too
stuff.
nice.
You had another one.
From your field with the 11, one high gradations series, right? Can you get the other like? It always has branches.
Clear what pine doesn't always have branches. So if you go into a pine forest, so where it's just a stand of pine, this is a difference between clear cutting and selective cutting. When you have eastern white pine and some of those western pine species, the only way to properly cut it is to clear cut it out and take the whole thing all at once. And you might do 15, 20, 25 acres at a time. Because if you just selectively cut and take every third tree, now that tree canopy is just going to fall anyway in a storm. They all work together with each other and they stand up. So then they wipe it all out. But when you get those trees that are 80, 100, 200 feet tall, and as they get bigger, all the limbs down below, they all die off. So when they die off, they fall down, and then as the tree grows, you have the clear lumber on the outside, and it might be 24 feet up that's clear with no knots at all. So you have a perfectly round log with nothing on it, and if it's sizable enough, then you'll get your 1x6, 1x12, whatever out of it that's clear. Hopefully that answered your question.
Question now, I talked to your shop and understand the building charges,
Yes, sir.
but what I didn't ask is what would it cost if you just want to like rip and process things for easier transports in a smaller vehicle?
If you have a smaller vehicle, let's just say you had your smart car and you wanted to get a board and you wanted to fit it in there somehow. You buy the board and you say, can you cut this 4 times so I can fit it in my vehicle? There's no charge for that whatsoever. We will cut that board up all day long for you. That's not a problem. However, if you were going to make a bowl and you came in and you wanted to get 2 feet off a 10-foot board, there is a $5 cut charge on that board. Plus you pay for your 2 feet. That's where the charge comes.
Oh, I do understand that now. Well, no, minimum, if I understand it, is a minimum of $50, at least they told me.
Correct.
$1 a board, but if you buy 50 feet, $1 a board, but.
Depending on what it is, each operation is a different thing. So if you're gonna take 4/4 lumber and you're gonna plane it to 3/4,
Right,
that's 50 cents a board foot. That's the charge for that. And you wanna rip an edge, 1 edge, that's 50 cents. If you wanna rip your second edge, that's 50 cents. So you're looking at $1.50 a board foot for millwork for all 3 operations combined.
right.
The minimum charge is $50 or whatever that board foot charge is. So if that board foot charge comes into $52.50, then it's $52.50.
Okay, but basically cross cuts as many as 4 times a board, just like that.
Yeah, we don't charge for process.
Okay,
Within reason. If you're gonna say, can I make a bunch of dice?
no. I'm just talking about things that I can fit to the back part of the house.
Yeah, to give you an idea, I mean, the lumber cut thing where the $5 charge comes from is, I have students come in from various places around, and it's, we'll just, it's local to here. And yes, and historically, they would come into my other company and they would they're building something and they have some idea, and those kids are incredibly talented for what they do. And they have 9 different boards. They want to foot off 9 different boards. Now we're going to cut an end off all those boards. We're going to relabel it. We got to go find all where those things go. There's a charge, a cost to that. So by the time I'm done doing that, we made nothing. It was just a waste of time.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
And you have 25 of them come in all at once.
Right,
Well, that's where the $5 cut charge comes in, because now they're starting to think about what they're doing. And instead of having 9 pieces, maybe they have 3, and they
Right.
can can you cut these 2 boards up over here so I can fit them in my vehicle? And then it becomes easier for everybody, including yourselves, if you show up the day that they're there. Side note, if you come in on a Saturday, come as early as you can, because then I can give you your time. Because everyone deserves time with us to find your perfect piece so you can make something fantastic like that over there. Or the violin that you made. Or anything that anyone else brought.
A little plug here for you. I've been up to your place. First time I'd ever been there about 1.5 years ago. I was doing a job for Senior Enlisted Academy on base, and I came up and got some walnut, some of the shorts, ran 50 inches, between 50 and 60 inches, because I was framing a deck plate. And I was, just out of the shorts, the cart that had them on, I'm thinking through it. It was the first time I had ever seen a piece of black walnut as highly figured as it was. It was amazing. Even rough cut, I could see it. Go, oh my God, this is I've never seen figured walnut. like this before, and it was in the cast off stuff.
Yeah, no, that's generally the shorts I don't go through. But when walnut comes in, I'll usually go through that, especially the 4/4 and the 8/4. I'll go through it myself and I'll pull things
So
out.
the stuff I got was
It's probably the 6/4.
six, I wanna say it was 6/4. I milled it down, I milled it down, and the frame that I did was, I ended up at about an inch.
You
So I
can
think I
find,
was
every now and then
6/4.
you find stuff in there. It might be something that I missed. But the best ones, when I'm going through Maple and you look at it, you kind of go, there's something going on with that. And you look at it again, and then you got to pull it out. You got to really look at it. You can tell there's something there. And it's got so many bird's eyes, you wouldn't be able to see it. And those are the best. Those are really cool.
And I was also amazed just how many types of wood that I had never heard of. Walking around through the, past all, like, I've never heard of like 3/4 of the types of wood that you guys carry.
Oh, yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stuff there, but it is a purpose for every single one of those that are there. One of the goofy ones I have is a Kentucky coffee nut. That one there, I've always wanted to see what the species look like. And anytime when I worked with my dad at the other company, I bring in something goofy, I'd always be accosted. What are we doing with this? What is this? It's some kind of R&D company, blah, blah, blah. Why'd you spend your money on this stuff? So I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't have to answer to anybody. So I brought in the Kentucky coffee nut because I wanted to see what it looked like. And I had told a longtime customer, used to go to Downs, about it. Oh, Kentucky coffee nut, that's cool. It's got great grain to it. He actually made a kitchen out of it. And he painted it with a weird green with gold fleck in it, and you can see the grain right through it. It's absolutely phenomenal stuff. But it's a goofy tree. It's side note with that tree there. It's that tree, the nut of the tree is poisonous. And I don't know what Native American figured out, that if you cook the nut, you can actually grind it up, make a tea and drink it. So when the settlers were moving west, they ran out of coffee, talked to the locals and they said, try this. Then you have Kentucky coffee. Those seeds are so dense that if you planted one in the ground, it will not germinate for 3 or 4 years. The only herbivore that existed in North America that was big enough to eat the tree, poop out the nuts, it's mastodon. So wherever those groves are, 10,000 years ago, a mastodon should have cracked. Let's think about that. And with that, I will leave you.